mute my audio stream there. So, welcome to Twitch Line, as always, your home for relationship advice here on Twitch. This is your host, Hodo Hori. You can also call me Z. Joined as always with my co commentator and best friend, Acorn, Mr. Tim. Also, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well, man. Just sticking by the AC, trying to keep it cool, and ready to get into some stuff tonight.
Yeah, it was a 90 plus degree day today, so very, very, very hot. My car registered 102 internal temperature, so it was really not fun for our trip
That
to lunch.
that's cooking.
It is not, I don't know, not hot yet to cook an egg on your dashboard, but I think pretty close to stifle people for sure. But let's take care of a couple of things here in the beginning. Let's just want to read you off some of our socials. As always, you can contact us here at twitchlinelove@gmail.com if you have any questions or you have any topics that you want to talk about. You can tweet us also at Twitchline. So drop us a follow there on Twitter. We are streaming to both Twitch and YouTube currently. So for those who are going to be joining us on YouTube, hello. You can go to our YouTube page at the bottom below. We post all of our older shows automatically onto YouTube, so you can catch a lot of our older shows there recorded. They're there for forever. Also, we've recently joined SoundCloud. So if you want to take Twitch Line on the go in a nice, convenient little package, go down there and check out our SoundCloud channel. And you can hear all the audio clips here from the recording, the podcast that you're hearing today here on Sunday. And because it is Sunday, Acorn, it is Sunday Focus Day. So today is a little different. We don't necessarily do the standard what we do, which is reading problems from emails or from Reddit. But today we focus up on a topic, and today our topic is going to be baggage. And not we're not talking about the type of baggage that you take on an airplane. We're talking about relationship baggage. So give me a little bit of an intro here as to what baggage means to people. So if people have never really heard that term before.
Sure. And this is not my personal definition of baggage, but the internet is a powerful tool, and I use it. So that when I did a search for it, it came up and saying that baggage is past experiences or long-held ideas regarded as burdens or impediments. Yeah, makes sense. Pretty
Yeah.
easy. But as you said, it's most often used when we're talking about relationships, describing when someone carries something from the past into their current or future relationships. And it usually refers to emotional issues, but for some people, it can include uh, things like debt or addiction, um, sometimes diseases, and even kids. Some people actually consider kids a uh, some kind of baggage or burden. It's kind of messed up to put that in the same list as the others, but for some people, it might be a kind of like a red flag or a reason not to continue. So, um, for us tonight, though, we're mostly going to be focusing on the emotional stuff, and uh, we actually have a what do you call those things? Something we can bring up here on the screen,
Hmm.
um, which we pulled from a website that just gives some examples of what baggage can look like. And if you want to bring that up and run people through it, get a
Yeah.
better sense of that.
Absolutely. So this was from an article on Pathos from a blog from a lady by the name of Lisa Duffy, and she provided some great examples of what she thought baggage would be, and we sort of pretty much agree with her. So our first example here is unresolved feelings of love for your ex-spouse or another past love. You know, people coming out of relationships will always have issues going into another one. Sometimes they're just not about to let go, and that can be somewhat problematic. A second example is something she calls the damaged goods syndrome, feeling if you're not worthy of somebody's love. And this is a somewhat common one because people going into relationships don't necessarily think that they're deserving of a relationship sometimes. Sometimes they feel like that it's not fair that they are in one and somebody that they know or somebody they feel like is more worthy isn't in one, and they feel sort of shame or guilt about being in a relationship. So it's a very interesting mentality, mindset with regards to it. Third one that she mentions is a strong desire to see your ex or your ex spouse fail. Schadenfreude has a tendency to
Yeah.
develop
The
when
hater's ball right there. Hate,
that's
hate,
right.
hate.
Hate, 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 hate. And that
Hate
is
your guts.
I don't know you, but I hate your guts. It's one of those things in which it's one of the worst, it's one of the bad feelings in all of us, but when you get out of a relationship, I think, and it wasn't a happy one, and you see them not succeed without you, there is a feeling that a lot of people believe that is joy. It's you don't want to see your ex succeed without you. It's almost you have to sort of internalize it. It's a little different, but you want to be feel like that you were the main reason that they were so happy. You were the main reason that they were so good. It's a very interesting feeling, and that happens a lot, especially in relationships that end very very badly. Fourth one is
Right,
a
if they've done you wrong.
yeah, exactly. So the fourth one, of course, is another one where somebody has done you wrong. Unreasonable distrust of others. Relationships can really erode trust in relationships, especially if you've had a spouse or an ex cheat on you multiple times, lie to you, steal your things. Those are just basic examples. There are all sorts of other things that could happen that can erode trust. And what ends up happening is that you carry that sort of erosion of trust into your next relationship where the person could be not that where that person is not in any way like your previous relationship, but it really really can harm what you go through. So it's a very very tough situation, especially if you come from a bad relationship that where trust was eroded. Replaying arguments, fights, or breakups in your mind. Now, this one I find very interesting because this was something that people who suffer from regret, I think, trouble have trouble with because did I say something wrong? Did I think about something that maybe I should have said it this way, and then I would have never led into the fight and led into the situation. A lot of the times people usually when they do this, they are blaming themselves for something that might not necessarily be their fault. So they're trying to sort of rationalize a reason as to what they could have done right in order to fix the situation. And sometimes that doesn't happen. We'll go more into depth, I think, a little bit of that in a sec. And then
Right.
the last
It's
one,
also
yeah,
it's also when they haven't got closure, when they're trying to work through it, but there's no one to work through it with. And at some point, they're just going over what was done, reliving that pain, and trying to overcome it because the other person isn't there to allow them to process it through all the way.
exactly. And then the last one is painful memories. That one is one of those things that they say that time heals all wounds, especially if you've been in a happy relationship and it does not end well. You remember the happy times, and then you remember the sad times, and then you messes up your day, and you sort of puts you in a sort of nasty mood to sort of go through this. But uh, Miss Duffy here from Pathy, so you see the link down onto the channel if you want to check out that article from her. Great examples, I think. Everything, especially like a lot of the last two specifically are basically replaying things in a relationship without closure. So people not being able to sort of settle down and just be happy that it's over or sad that it's over and not being able to sort of move on is a common example of baggage. But it's one of those things in which, everybody going from one relationship to another has, I think, uh, their own baggage going into a relationship, Tim. So, I mean, it's one of the things. What do you think of the six here that she's listed? And I think they're very good, but I think there might be a couple of things that are just sort of not on here.
Oh, of course. I mean, baggage can look a lot different depending on who you are and what you've been through. But I think these are probably very common cases. And I think almost anyone reading down this list who's ever been in, a relationship or more than one relationship can probably point there and say, yep, 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 did that. Or, the other person in my relationship did that. So, Yeah, I mean, I don't think you could sit here and list out all things that could be considered baggage, but the unresolved feelings, the inability to have closure can definitely yield stronger baggage and bigger baggage to carry on. Um, Especially as it comes to that, as you said, the erosion of trust, or feeling like you're damaged goods. There's a lot of people on Reddit now that are, this is for more for our Wednesday show, but um, they are saying, I want to be dating, but can I even date? Am I broken? Am I deserving of love? It's just, it's tough out there. And so through tonight's deep dive, we're going to get to ways people can perhaps reclaim control over uh, their emotions, how they deal with the past, and maybe let go of some of that baggage, or at least give people a way to look at, what is their baggage and maybe identify it. That's probably the first step. But before we go in that direction, I was just wondering if you, I mean, I know I have short stories to share, but I was wondering if maybe you had a little quick blip of a story to share related to baggage.
Well, there are a couple. So, I think the most recent one was that I ended up dating someone who, let's just say, got cheated on by a friend of hers. So she was in a relationship previous to being in a relationship with me where she lost her ex boyfriend to a friend. And it was a very, very huge trust thing. So
Was it her friend or
it was her
his
friend.
friend?
It was her friend.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then it was not cool because, at the time she was the one that she was sort of relying on for information and sort of advice, and she had no idea that they had basically behind their back because they were suffering issues, like her and her ex boyfriend were suffering issues. They were going to the same person, and instead of her sort of not sort of attaching herself to the ex boyfriend, she ended up getting involved in a way that was just terrible. But me meeting her afterwards sort of knew the situation, but sort of took the plunge anyway. And it can be very problematic being the first boyfriend after a big breakup like that. And in my particular occasion, it was just she was just not willing to open up and trust me with things and just talk. So it became a very shallow relationship, and I understood where she was coming from. She really threw herself into her work. She never really um, really had she would make time, but then if the time would be very very short, it would not necessarily think she was just almost unready to be in a relationship, and it just sort of ruined what we were sort of going through. And then all of a sudden, she just broke it off. She was just unable to sort of get over it, and I was a just person sort of like sort of dealing with the carnage at that point. Tried my best to sort of deal with what I had, and she's a very very nice girl, but it was one of those things in which she was just unable to get past some of the past issues in her relationship. And it was a
Did she
it,
avoid introducing you to her friends because she didn't want to relive that?
that was the thing. It was because of what happened here. She really didn't have that many friends after that. She was one of those type of girls that like depended on her ex-boyfriend for friends, which
Okay.
yeah, it was one of those things in which it wasn't good because there was no other social outlet for it. And with that, she was sort of isolated. And unfortunately, she was not in an overall good situation. She ended up moving out of the area and getting like a fresh new start, which was in the end, because I've been in contact with her still, not on a sort of relationship or anything, just sort of a hi, how you doing, it put her in a better situation. So she needed a change of scenery and basically just sort of get out of Dodge, and I needed a fresh start. So it
That
wasn't with
is one
me.
way to drop your baggage is
Yeah.
to literally leave it at the airport and fly somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, like literally in this particular case, I mean, the baggage went sailing off to another state. And that is one of the actual ways that you can sort of deal with this change of scenery, change of city, change of location, change of where you live. Just
Well, it's
something
some of
completely
it, but I
new.
mean, if you have the trust issues, it's those trust issues will go with you, whether or not you've left the people that did you wrong behind.
Oh
But
yeah,
when you go on, you still probably carry some of that. But that's interesting,
yeah.
and I'm sorry that you had to deal with some of that. But I guess that's what happens.
Yeah,
It's part of
and that happens. It's like, and sometimes you can't control it. It's not your fault. And I have my own baggage. I mean, you see me on the internet all the time, and maybe not necessarily the best allocation of my time as when it comes on the weekends or doing other stuff. So, you know, everyone has issues. How about you? That was just a recent example of mine, but you know,
oh yeah.
I for you must be a little bit more difficult, I think. I mean, nothing is sort of short and casual like that. Probably you've had a little bit longer relationships between girlfriends because I've known most of them.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the first one that came to my mind was actually not from one of my longer term relationships. The when we started the topic here, the first one that jumped to my mind was actually on first date, and we'd gone to dinner, and after dinner we were not trying to end the date, but didn't necessarily want to go back to either person's house. Like it wasn't going to be like that, but we decided to take a walk, and we picked a perfect location for a first date, which is a dark forested area where you walk around and like kind of scary for a lot of people. But I guess we knew each other for a little while beforehand, so it wasn't an issue. Um, and during the course of that walk, we were chatting about some things, and uh, I think I just was just asking her questions about how she liked to spend her time, and like in a flash, her face changed, and she looked at me and was like, "Why, are you trying to control me or something?" Like because I'd asked about how she spends her time, suddenly I think maybe from a previous relationship, someone who's trying to manage her time, and that little flip of the switch there happened right in front of my eyes, and that was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, not even close." I was just asking what you like to do for your own personal time, but okay, let's move on. Needless to say, that was the first and last date. Not necessarily because of that, but because there were just a few things off. But that does stand out to me as uh, a kind of like a red flag. But you got to give people enough time to show themselves. So I wasn't going to hold that against her. But yeah, that was one. I mean, in longer term relationships, for sure. I know I brought baggage, and I know that some of the girls that I dated brought baggage as well. And it wasn't always just a jerk X. Sometimes it was baggage from their childhood. Sometimes it was baggage from their relationship with their parents, or how they were treated in school. There's all kinds of stuff that can affect you deeply on an emotional level and scar you and stay with you. It can change how you identify yourself, how you see yourself in the mirror, and all these things can add up over time. And unless you really work at it, they can stay with you your whole life. So uh, to move forward in this conversation here, I think it'd be kind of important for us to talk about how uh, not addressing your past issues
Hmm.
is actually what creates and kind of snowballs into larger amounts of baggage. And just being able to talk about the past and sort of piece through what was is a really significant way to move forward and to try to figure out how to get rid of some of it. So uh, I'm when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking like it's important for people to recognize a few things, and one of those things is to be able to differentiate between what is real and what is unreal from your past. Um, like for example, like I don't know, you talked about cheating
Hmm.
earlier.
Yeah.
So there are some people out there that have strong fears that they're going to be cheated on, regardless of whether or not they were cheated on at all. And they will bring that into the relationship, and they will not trust the person they're with. They will, uh, you live in a constant state of jealousy, fear, distrust, anxiety because of an impending cheating, which which may never come. So in this case, being able to separate what is real and unreal. If you have not been cheated on, it is unreal, and therefore you don't have to exist in a way that you're going through all the emotional turmoil that would come along with that. So looking at your past relationships and seeing, what really happened that hurt you and that you may have to be worried about in the future, and then what was in your mind and what could be let go. That was one of them. Uh, Another one is what was significant and what was insignificant. Right. So like, how impactful was your ex partner's behavior really?
Mhm.
Uh, is what they did something that sort of bugged you, uh, or was it something that totally threw you into chaos and made your relationship living hell? These things are, it's important that the strength of and the significance of what was going on there should indicate whether or not you should bring it forward as baggage. If it's annoying, well, the next person you date is going to be annoying, guaranteed. Everybody's annoying. Humans are annoying. But if you if you go into your next relationship already pissed off about something, and this person hasn't had a chance to really be themselves yet, and you're already putting that on them, that's just not fair.
No,
So to
no, it's
consider those things is probably pretty important too.
well, just to add a little
Um,
bit into that.
yeah,
I
go
mean,
ahead.
it's just one of those things in which what people deem significant and insignificant. I have a. It's one of those things in which age has a tendency to sort of play into that. And you and me being older, know through experience what we think is significant to us and what is insignificant to us. 20-year-old me, though, would have been completely different as to regarding what is significant and what is insignificant. And I think when you look back on some of the relationships that I have and possibly what you've had, some of the things that you might deem significant back then possibly could be insignificant, and the other way around also, like being able to sort of let something go that really probably should have been addressed, but you let it go because of whatever or another is one of those things. And I just think it's one of those points that I think when creating baggage, uh, people don't have that sort of real assessment as to the importance of something or another. So it's just my little 2 cents with regards to it all.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's meaningful. Um, we also can consider like what should be dropped and what is important to carry forward. Right? We learn valuable things from our previous relationships, and some things are really important. So we're making better decisions in the next person we pick. Other things, however, can be left behind. Right? If your ex, I don't know, a spy for another government, you don't necessarily have to go into your next relationship thinking this person's probably a spy and I need to be worried about that. It's a stupid example, but you know what I'm saying, right?
No, no,
So,
exactly.
but what this sort of goes to the real and unreal thing, but it's what do I need to consider in my future, and what can I just say, okay, this bad thing happened and that's what it was, and I'm going to move on from it. And the last one, uh, this is sort of like this is like a personal thing, so everyone will have a different moment here, but uh, kind of figuring out what is just separating what is the core of who I am, and then what is something that can be changed or should be changed about me, right? So if in a previous relationship or in your first relationship, early relationships, you were a passionate, emotional person, total drama king or queen, and uh, you were living in that, and that to you said, "Oh, this is love. This is what it's supposed to feel like. This is supposed to be raw and passionate and sometimes wild." That can be who you are as a person and something that you will not adjust going forward in life. But it also can be something that can mature and, or you can actually purposefully change it. Right? If letting those passions go wild ruined your relationship and caused people to distance themselves or caused emotional damage to them, you might consider reining that back in a little bit. And you might consider uh, how how you identify yourself and whether or not there are elements of that that could be actually be considered baggage that you carry forward into another relationship. So another thing to think about there. Um, Actually, there's this really funny comic writer named Katana Chetwynd that my wife and I always like to. We follow her on Twitter, and we probably going to buy her book pretty soon here. But she has a really funny way of looking at relationships and sort of like micro experiences inside a relationship and putting it in four frames, and it's pretty cute and amusing. But one of her comics has become a private joke between my wife and I, and it relates to this whole baggage thing. Can you bring it up?
Yep,
Yeah, there
it's
we go.
up. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So it's frame one. Ha, good story. When was that? The before time. You mean before we met? Shh, shh, shh. The before time. Like with anger in her face. Like basically anything that happened before this relationship was no good. I don't want to hear about it. It doesn't exist. There's probably some baggage there about
Hmm.
exes and whether or not this person's loved someone else. Who knows? But it's very funny. And so my wife and I now often, if something comes up from before that we were, a little uncomfortable about or just don't like, we're just like, shh, that's the before time.
Well,
So, okay.
no, I was just going to say that it's really funny, and it really just goes to your point that um, it's a great sort of four-panel summary of people not dealing with past issues, and really just pushing it to the back, and we're not going to discuss it. That's not between you and me. That's between me and my past. So, like you don't have to address it. That's okay. But it's a very interesting summary of what we've just talked about, and it's very poignant. I think it's like right to the point.
Oh.
Mhm.
So another random question here. Um, do you think that everyone has baggage, and do you think that baggage has to be a bad thing?
Yes, and no, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. What baggage to me actually says is that you've had experience in relationships. You've had either positive or negative experiences that possibly can influence as who you are. Does everyone have baggage? Yes, because if you are human, you have baggage. Living causes baggage. It's not one of those things in which you can survive every day with everything being hunky dory and you have no issues. You have preferences in food. You have money preferences on how you want to spend it or save it. You have um, like just routines on sleeping, how you go out, how you talk to people. All of those things can lead to a any various different types of baggage. And does it have to be bad thing? Does it have to be a bad thing? No. No, it's one of those things in which you can use what you know and how you act to learn how to either become a better person or instruct somebody else as to why you think their behavior is incorrect and why yours is correct. Using your tendencies or quote baggage as an example of how you sort of deal with things. Um, I think baggage in our sense that we're talking about today has a very sort of negative connotation to it all. But it's basically life experiences that can be, in a nutshell, summed up and sort of becomes and acts out in behaviors in your relationship. So, as we said before, your the way you affect people in regards to trust, the way you feel how about cheaters and are unresolved with regards to things like that, the Schadenfreude that you feel about an ex, all those things uh, is is just one of those things that can sort of affect you how you go forward. And I just don't think it necessarily has to be a bad thing. What's your sort of take on it all?
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think that sure everyone has it. I think that if you don't have baggage, it means you've been living in a bubble, in a cave, both in a cave inside of a bubble. uh, but if you See, so the reason I was asking this was like, I was wondering, can you ask or can you call someone else on their baggage, or is that like a social faux pas? Like, are you allowed to say, "Hey, you know, don't bring this baggage into this relationship," or is that asking for trouble?
No, and I think that is one of those things. This is requires a serious conversation with your partner. I think if you feel like you need to set ground rules for your relationship, then I think that's absolutely fine. I think if you sit down with your partner and say, "Hey, look, we're going to be dating now. These are things that I don't appreciate. I don't appreciate lying. I don't appreciate inconsideration. And these are real things that I would sort of say. And I trust you in what you do, but just, if you make me feel like that I shouldn't be trusting you, then let me know because I don't want to go into a relationship without trusting the other person." And I think
Do you think someone's gonna do that? Like, "Hey, don't trust me.
I don't
I'm not
know.
a good person to be in a
I
relationship
don't
with."
I don't think anybody would do that, but it's one of those things in which, like, you're dating somebody who has a tendency to cheat. Like, a particular person you're going into a relationship has cheated on multiple boyfriends already. uh do you go into that relationship still trusting that person, or do you go into that
If you're
relationship
young, you do.
yeah,
If you
and then it could
if
blow up in your face, right? So
yes,
it's
yes,
yeah,
sure.
sure. So like,
It has happened.
Eh, yeah, but I mean, I haven't had that conversation when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, when you're trying to sort of figure out like what relationship or what you're trying to sort of do in your relationship, I think that conversation is a bit natural. It's like, you just sort of discuss how you feel like you should be going about things.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, as long as you have a person that's open and honest, then you could probably go pretty far. And then maybe that's a good example, or not an example, like a indication for you to say this person is being open and honest about their faults, and that to me says that I can trust them more, and that I'm dealing with a mature, responsible kind of person who wants something real. So perhaps that's a way.
Yeah.
Um, so one of the ways that people avoid dealing with their baggage is I'm gonna coin a phrase here because I like to do that. I'm gonna call it sugar gliding. Okay. Now, don't know if everyone out there is familiar with this particular animal. There's a cute little rodent called a sugar glider who has it's like a flying squirrel or something, and it will
It's a
jump and
rodent,
open up
Tim.
its arms and
It's a
legs. Yeah, I
rodent,
said that.
Tim.
Yes, I said that. I said that. He jumps up and opens his paws and legs and spreads them out, so he turns into like a little flying, basically gliding uh, fur ball. And if we have a video here, you can actually watch it in action.
Yeah. So I'm gonna put it up here on the screen so that you can show you, so you can take a look. I'm gonna mute the music here so that you can actually see, but you'll see what a sugar glider actually does, and you see him just sort of jump off the door, spread his wing. Well, it's not really wings. I guess it's just his body, and just sort of, there it is, and
And
just
look how tightly he grabs on at the end there
yeah.
for dear life. Okay, so when I made up this thing of like sugar gliding, it's basically the people who go from relationship to relationship without any space in between because they can't possibly deal with being alone. They're people that are generally have self-esteem issues and are uh, almost incapable of existing without someone to validate them that they are worth holding on to and that they're worth having a relationship with. So they're going from so they're hopping to relationship to relationship, and these kind of people oftentimes carry their baggage forward because they didn't take any time to look inward and to say, okay, what went wrong with my last relationship? What was the fault of the other person? What was the fault? Where does the blame lie in me? And very little self-reflection, mostly just trying to kill the bad feelings of a breakup or being alone by jumping directly onto the next person, aka sugar gliding. So I don't know if that'll catch on, but I like my little coin of phrase there.
No,
Um, go ahead.
I get it. No, I really get it. I've known so many people who are like that. Who, a lot of it happened in college, but I've seen people today who are just unable to be by themselves, and it seems weird. They're just almost like uncomfortable knowing that they're not in a relationship, which to me is odd, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think it comes down to dependency issues and just people feeling like they can't be alone. And also, it's really easy to dump all of your crap onto someone new because they have not been dealing with all your crap for the last 2 years. They're brand new and fresh. They've got all this emotional energy to try to fix you with. They have strong shoulders because they haven't been worn down. They're you know they so these people that do this, they just sort of use the other people as a security blanket and uh, and will continue to make the same mistakes over and over and over again going forward. So, all that being said, we say to ourselves, okay, well, how do we avoid that? Or how do we avoid making these same mistakes over and over again? How do we avoid carrying unnecessary baggage forward into the next relationship? And I think, which I just sort of, tiptoed around before,
Mm-hmm.
is two things that self reflection and then also doing something called a self inventory. Now, this is different from clinical psychology, where a self inventory is actually can even be like a test battery, and it's pretty deep and extensive. But for me tonight, what I'm talking about is just a kind of a period of quiet, deep thinking, where you have complete honesty with yourself. Um, I would recommend doing this when it's not very busy. You don't have a lot of people around, very very late at night or early in the morning before the world is woken up. Um, or before all of your responsibilities right there in front of you. For some people, it helps to write it out like a journal. Other people, saying the words out loud, even in front of a mirror, just makes it more real. Um, and that there are a whole lot of questions you can ask yourself to do this kind of self inventory. But we have an example list taken from the Share Care website. There's a nurse named Jan Campbell who came up with a decent list here of questions that you can ask yourself. And uh, I don't think that we're going to go through them all tonight, just because the purpose of this is not to take you all through the self inventory thing. But you can go to that website. We have the link below here, and we'll put it in our YouTube video once that's up there in
Yep.
the details section. But just some of these questions seem very on the surface, very general and like, how could I possibly learn something about myself by asking this question? But if you really get into it and you're really honest and you just you put it down on paper, you'll be very surprised what comes out.
Well,
S
Tim,
yeah.
it's one of these things that as we go through some of the questions, anybody who's watching us can see the questions on the screen. I mean, sometimes these are questions that people don't want an answer to. It's like, how do you sort of like answer a question that you yourself don't really want to answer? So, some of these are somewhat hard questions when you ask them. Like, do you like what you see when you look in the mirror? If somebody is going through a tumultuous time, that answer might be no, but you might not. You might be lying to yourself when you answer, so yes in your sort of self-evaluation in the morning. These are not necessarily easy questions to answer for a lot of people. So,
No,
yeah,
personal growth is not easy.
yeah.
And having a good healthy relationship and a good uh and a, a good organized cleanly interior is not an easy thing to arrange. So for people to go through this may be one of the more difficult things you've ever done in your life, because it will force you to answer questions that may upset you or may make you see some things about yourself that you're not comfortable with, and will likely point out some of these areas where you've been carrying around some icky stuff and possibly even dumping that onto other people that you care about.
Yep.
So, did any of these questions here strike you as more poignant than the others?
No, I mean, like, I think some of them are very interesting questions. The ones that I think strike me more, like, are some personal things that I myself have been sort of trying to wonder, like, do you have dreams and goals that you're striving for? Or do you live day by day, allowing whatever shows up to form your life? That's a very interesting question to me, because currently, in my certain situation, I am sort of, living day to day, to the sense that, like, I have things that I've already achieved. So it's sort of hard to sort of answer that question. Is that, like, is there a bigger goal? Is there something I should be striving for? And it takes sort of takes a second to sort of answer some of these questions. She puts up very, very good questions. So, like, if anybody's interested, you should maybe, start going through, and she does a good job listing them and making sure. But that was the one that sort of strikes me, because you sort of make my I sort of have to think about that myself, and just sort of look at that situation. Is that, like, is there anything bigger that I want to achieve? um am I happy with what I am now, or do I want to do more? I think everybody, a lot of times, have to take a look at themselves and say, hey, look, am I happy where I am? And if the answer is no, then you need to do something about fixing it. But me, I'm a very content person, content even at this moment right now, having a good time doing this podcast. And at the same time, it's like, uh I have a tendency to sort of ride with the wind a little bit, and just sort of go where the wind takes me. And then all of a sudden, I'm trying my best to do what I'm trying to do. So, be it this podcast, game broadcasting on Overwatch, or all sorts of other things, it's just one of those interesting. Is that baggage on my part? Possibly. Yeah.
Well, see, I think as this question applies to relationships,
Yeah.
you might look at it like on a day to day basis, are you working towards your personal relationship goals, or are you just sort of cruising, right? There are some people that are like, I really, really want to be a mother or father, and the person that I'm with does not want that.
Hmm.
But you're staying in that relationship, you're cruising because there are things that are comfortable about it. But like your dream and your goal is not, you're not one step closer to that, right? You're still living in a, just sort of status quo, next day, next day, next day kind of situation. And so when people are talking about like what 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 are they doing to actualize their dreams
Hmm.
in that situation, it's not happening.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I think that all of these are really interesting question to ask, regardless of whether you're in a relationship, regardless of where you are in your life. It will tell you something about who you are and how you see the world. But for those of you that are having reoccurring issues in your relationships as you go forward, who are seeing uh, one relationship after the next sort of failing, these questions might actually shine a light on what's causing those things to fall apart. So,
Yep. Hmm.
well worth going into. And if you got to cry a little bit, go for it because that's good to you.
Yeah.
It'll help you.
Yeah.
um,
Well,
so
truth's hard. So, like,
yeah,
it can be very emotional.
sure, and it should be. That's what makes it so great. So, so after you've pieced through all these thoughts and you start to like determine what influence your past has in your present day life and your relationships, you can start to you can just to learn about yourself, and it's going to help you uh, learn from the past and help you to define healthy boundaries. Make sure you don't recreate past dysfunction and repeat mistakes. Actually, I think you have a don't you have a pop up slide for this part?
Yes, I do. There you
Yeah.
go. I'm just going to put all of them up
So
on the screen at the same time here.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll just go back and talk about that last one for a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
Um, so the whole idea of like defining healthy boundaries, this is something that definitely comes with uh, experience in relationships, finding out what worked for you, what didn't, and finding out, finding the strength in yourself to say, I'm okay with this and I'm not okay with that, and this is how it has to be for me to be happy in my relationship. Drawing those lines will pretty much make sure that you don't have to go through them again and to deal with baggage that comes from being repeatedly, abused.
Yeah.
So for sure, that's an important takeaway from this. Doing those questions also can help you target red flags more quickly and easily. Yeah, as you know more about yourself, you know more about what you're looking for, what you're willing to put up with, um, what motivates you in love. So when you see the things that get in the way of that, those red flags, you can, peace out real quickly, or or at least get on top of the problem and say, "Hey, this is not working for me, and this needs to be changed. Otherwise, I'm gonna move on."
Yeah.
Uh, it can also help you identify what role you play in the creation and maintenance of your happiness. And a lot of people are really unaware of how much influence they have over their happiness. And a lot of it's just a frame of mind, just deciding that you're not going to let bullshit get in the way, and that you're going to, focus more on the things that make you happy.
Yep.
But uh, the opposite side of that is that you also be able to avoid the things that drag you down or even put you in dangerous situations. Um, and some people's baggage is that they just constantly keep finding ways, and the baggage part of it, bringing them back down and putting them into the situations that are unhealthy for them. And then the last one here, it will help you allow the person you're with now to introduce you to positive, healthy things that you might not have experienced before. So letting go of some of that baggage will open up space in your relationship where you can try something new, or see something new. I can't tell you how many friends and how personally how many times I've experienced it where you're with someone new and you're just like, wow, I I didn't know that's how I was supposed to be treated, or I didn't know that people would do such a nice thing for another person, or would be willing to sacrifice this. There's just so many moments like that where you're surprised because of the way you've been treated before, and because of the things that you believed to be true about love or how you should interact with someone else. And if you've got baggage and you're dragging it on, you sometimes recreate those dynamics which actually are hurting you. You fall back into the routine of abuse because you're you kind of create it. And even if your partner may not even be willingly trying to go towards it, but you might, because of your baggage, pull them into it.
Yeah.
So
Because you know what you know, right? Unless you learn something new or a new behavior or a new way, humans are they have a tendency to sort of fall back to what they know and what they're comfortable with, and that could be a sort of nasty part with regards to it. I mean, I think you and I have seen relationships where it wasn't necessarily meant to be in a way dominating or abusive, but that is all that person ever knew. So it is the behavior that she sort of associated or he associated with what needs to sort of happen in the relationship, and they just didn't know any better. Sort of sucks, but that happens to a lot of people. So
right, and in the end, it leads us to kind of like the last point for this particular part of the talk tonight. Um, is this where we talk about forgiveness? Can we forgive ourselves, or the people who've hurt us, and what would that mean for us if we could forgive and we could let go of that baggage? What would open up before us, and what would we be allowed to do with our love and our relationships? What kind of, what limits would we break through? And then also, what would it mean if we can't? If we cannot get over this baggage, how does that dictate our future? So, you know, um, if we can't get forgiveness or give forgiveness, we need to at least recognize that we can't change the past. That's not going to ever be different than it was, and we have to move forward because we have a future. So we need to at least deal with the reality that we exist in. It'll be uncomfortable, but you know, that's life. Sorry.
and the thing about it is like like if you can't forgive, then there are other ways of dealing with things. So, for example, cheating. If you cannot forgive cheating, you find it abhorrent or terrible with regards to it all, and you just sort of can't get over it. Cut it out of your life. I mean, there are ways of dealing with things that you can't forgive. At least I think. Um, but you know, it, it's one of those things I think is just a little difficult because people have to sort of realize what the issue is, be it whatever you deem as your quote baggage. Um, but a lot of the times it is very, very hard for humans to change. And changing is one of those things that takes time, takes effort, takes the ability for people to sort of want to do and might need help in doing so. And I think with a lot of the issues that we've brought up here and the background of what it is, I think sometimes it is necessary to not uh, be alone if you're trying to sort of get over some of the baggage that you are trying to let go of, to send it on its merry way and have it never come back. So, you know, this is a very, I think, difficult topic for a lot of people because of the nature of the issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I, so for example, with the cheating thing you mentioned there, uh, forgiving someone for cheating doesn't mean that you allow cheating or that you embrace cheating, right? So if the person that cheated on you in your last relationship, you don't necessarily need to forgive them for that harm that they did to you through
Yeah,
that. But you can say, I'm not going to let that influence my present relationship or my future relationships. I'm not going to let that careless person's actions influence me on the level that I won't be able to trust someone who has shown no indication that they're cheating, who has never wronged me in that way. You know, like you don't need to let the damage you experienced before kind of come to life in every new connection you make going forward.
yeah.
It's that whole like once bitten, twice shy thing, you know? You
Hmm.
get to you develop a fear and you just carry it on. And so and then the big problem is there are a lot of careless people out there and people who choose someone who would cheat on them. Yeah, they may have something going on in their, you know, maybe they didn't do this self inventory and they're not really aware of who they are and they are picking people that are really crappy for them and are cheating on them. And it happens once, twice, three. At some point they're like everyone cheats because I have a really bad experience of it. So that's you know, that's it's a shame, but it doesn't have to be that way. So um just to sort of pull it all together here, I think that, you know, since we both agree, we've all got baggage, and you know, but if we want to be in a relationship, then we have to be baggage handlers, and
Hmm.
so do the people that we're with. And the best bet is just like try to work on yourself, try to match with someone who is consciously working on themselves and is trying to be aware of these things too. And don't let other people tell you that you're broken just because you've been through some stuff. You know
No,
that
that's right.
everyone's on the road, everyone deals with these kind of breakdowns, and you know, you just try to help each other to get to a better place, and hopefully it all comes together for you.
Yeah, yeah, and it can be difficult. Just don't let um, lack of movement going forward be something that you sort of end up giving up on because sometimes it will take uh, an inordinate amount of time to go forward and maybe release some of the baggage it is. And you'll need help from future partners and all sorts of other things. Learning new ways to deal with situations and things that we had mentioned earlier, like targeting red flags to prevent yourself from getting into a situation that could end up harming you um, and setting you back. So it is very, very difficult to deal with all of this stuff. But, you know, I honestly believe that a positive attitude and the willingness to understand that these are personal issues that you yourself are dealing with but you want to better yourself and not necessarily have your behaviors influence your relationship in a negative way to go forward, I think ends up being a positive thing for everyone. So, yeah. It's a tough subject, though, because, it, you know, you mentioned earlier, like, is asking somebody about their baggage difficult? Yes. Is asking someone about their baggage absolutely necessary? Uh, not really, but I also think that if you can get a little bit of an insight on a partner that you are serious about and you do care about, um, it can be approached, and and then I think you can go from there as to willingness with regards to how you better it for him or her. So,
Amen.
yes. So we're reaching upon the hour here, so I think we're going to wrap it up here soon. I honestly believe that we could have gone on a long time because there we were just sort of scratching the surface with regards to this topic and with regards to the different types of baggage. I think a lot of our examples were related to emotional baggage. There are all sorts of other types of baggage that we really didn't actually go into: financial baggage, family baggage, all which, being
Yep.
Asian, I think has its own category when you talk about that. Uh, but that is my personal experience. Is there any other types of other examples that maybe we didn't mention here, team, so that possibly
Yeah,
that
yeah. I
yeah
mean, of course there are. Just uh, I don't know. For me, it's this could be broken down into 10 different casts. We
yeah
could be here for a week on this, but um, what occurred to me throughout the course of this cast here was that we're asking people to do something that's pretty hard with the whole self inventory thing and like being honest with yourself. That's hard enough for anyone. If someone's in the middle of, you know, their relationship and they're caught up in all this stuff that's going on around them and their emotions, everything, that's going to be even harder. And then this other thing occurred to me was like, how how willing is a person to do this kind of emotional work without pressure on them?
yeah
I mean, or even, men. Are men willing to go get deep into their emotions, get into them feels, and say, where am I weak? I mean, this kind of goes against that traditional man thing. And while there are a lot more people that are woke and, you know, willing to work on themselves, I think that asking some guys to really honestly answer some of those questions would be tough.
yeah
And that's a whole other thing.
Yep, it absolutely is. We're going to have to save that for another topic. But in the meantime, here, we want to thank you very, very much for joining us today and hope you found our discussion interesting with regards to baggage and how possibly you can sort of help yourself recognize it and maybe understand what a little bit of it is. But before we go, we wanted to mention our email address. You can email us questions that you would like answered from us at twitchlinelove@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at twitchline on Twitter. You can also click below for our YouTube channel. You can hit subscribe, and you'll be able to sort of follow us along on YouTube, where we archive a lot of our videos here when we are offline. So we will break down the Sunday morning discussion. This Sunday discussion will be archived on YouTube. And if you want us on the go, you can subscribe also to our SoundCloud address. So we also digitize this, turn it into an MP4, and then you can just sort of stream it and listen to us on your ways to work on Monday or after on Thursday, where you listen to our topics again. And there are many ways to enjoy us here, so that you can sort of hopefully get a little bit of insight on what we do. As all we're trying to do is help everybody with their relationship issues and hopefully understand what is going on. But that is going to end up that's going to be it for us. Tim, thank you so much for joining me today. As always, you've been a wonderful co-host.
Yeah, man, I like spending time with you. I like talking about stuff that matters, and I like the idea that maybe someone out there, someone will get something,
Yeah.
anything, and it will help them get to a better place in their life. So good times. Looking
Uh,
forward to the next one, Wednesday night, 10
ex-
p.m.,
hey,
10:30.
you beat me to it. So yeah, we'll be on live again here on Twitch and on YouTube here at between 10 and 10:30 here on Wednesday night, where we'll be going back and we'll be answering questions from Reddit. But for Acorn, Tim, for and I'm Hodo Z. Thank you so much for joining us today, and hopefully you have a pleasant